Hey, you know what's kind of cool is that now that we are back here, and this is after Labor Day, we are going to be starting a brand new series, and today is the first day of that. Steve is going to actually. I'm just going to do the introduction to it today, and then we're gonna lock into like 12 weeks talking about character. And this is something that Steve has been working on, and it's pretty exciting what he's pulled together on all of that. So before we launch into this, I'm just going to pray. Father, thank you for Jesus, and thank you for the teachings and the work of Jesus. But this morning, as we focus on the example of Jesus, help us to be able to relate. Help us to understand that Jesus is our example, and as we draw closer to you, as we understand God more, we become a little more like Jesus. Help us to engage that and to receive that and to strive for that, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. So this series is called Becoming Like Christ. It's a journey of transformation. And what's interesting, especially for us who subscribe as evangelicals, the idea of belief being central to our faith is key, right? Like, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. And that is central to everything we believe about faith, that it comes from belief. But following Jesus isn't just about belief. It's about becoming like him in character and action. Right? Have you ever looked at Jesus, and I know some of you have, look at Jesus and go, oh, I want to be like Jesus. Right? Like you study to see what Jesus does in different circumstances. The idea of becoming like Jesus. Have you ever had a hero? When I was when I was a kid, there was someone that I looked up to that I really wanted to be like. This is him. Now, I don't know if you, Wendell Clark entered the NHL when I was in high school. I tried to grow that mustache, all right? And it's a little difficult to do when you just have peach fuzz, but I did my best. When I played hockey, I picked the number 17 whenever I could. I just wanted to be like Wendell Clark. I thought I was tough. Well, maybe I thought I wanted to be tough. I was never tough. Look at me. But this is who I aspired to be. If I was playing hockey, I wanted to look like him. He was such a cool guy. He is this leader. And if you've ever been there, hopefully we have no Swifties here, but if you've ever, Swifties are fine, but if you have aspired to be like someone, we kind of get the concept of what it's like to actually be a Christ follower, right? But it's a bit of a tough transition for us to admire Jesus the way I admired Wendell Clark and wanted to be like him, wear his number, talk about what a great player he was. And my new journey as a Christ follower should be my perspective on Jesus, right? That I should actually be following Jesus, walking where he walks, the desire to be like he is, to react the same way that he reacts depending on the circumstances that we're in, to think like Jesus, to love like Jesus, to forgive like Jesus. That is what we should aspire to be like. Now, here's the thing about Wendell Clark and I could wear the number, I could try to grow the mustache. I was nothing like Wendell Clark. I couldn't even be like Wendell Clark, right? Like, honestly, if I were to go against Probert, there would be nothing of me left, right? Like, I could not become Wendell Clark. But in my journey with Jesus, I never fully become Jesus, but over this journey, I become more like Jesus. And it has nothing to do with what I wear. It has nothing to do with the mustache that I grow. It's not about the outside. It's about how the inside of me changes as I become more like Jesus because I am following Jesus. There's an old Hebrew proverb that dates back about 200 years before Jesus. And it says this. It says, "Let thy house be a meeting house for the wise, and powder thyself with the dust of their feet." Sounds a little weird. Probably sounds a little more poetic in Hebrew. "And bring their words, and drink their words with thirstiness." And so over a period of time, it got shortened to be covered with your rabbi's dust, which is this picture of me following my rabbi, the idea of being so engaged with your rabbi that you pick up the dust from whatever, their feet from walking behind them on dusty roads. Or the other idea is that as a disciple, you would sit at the feet of your rabbi to listen to what they were teaching. And it's the idea of getting dusty as I follow Jesus. Am I willing to get the dust from Jesus' feet? Am I marked by Jesus' dust? And we are called as disciples to wear the dust of our rabbis. And our rabbi is Jesus. To follow Jesus so closely that I wear the dust from where he walks. To sit in the presence of Jesus, in the teachings of Jesus, so intimately that I wear the dust from his feet. Discipleship is transformation. And when we look at what it is to be transformed, there's a passage in 2 Corinthians that talks about, and actually, if you're following through in the Bible recap, we've been in the Old Testament, right? And how many people find the Old Testament a little bit difficult to read? Right? Anybody that's actually reading through the Old Testament, all right? And there is some pretty weird stuff in the Old Testament. And so in 2 Corinthians, Paul says this thing. He says, you know, when Moses spoke, his face was veiled to conceal the glory of God. And look this up, 2 Corinthians chapter 3. You can write that down. We're going to cover part of it, but you need to understand this before we get to where I'm going. Is that it says that even now, when the teachings of Moses are read, there is still a veil. We can't see exactly what's being said unless we see it through Jesus. And it talks about having unveiled eyes, that we can only understand what the Old Covenant speaks of if we see it through the lens of Jesus. Now here's another quick plug about the Bible recap, because if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget, is that October 1st, if you've ever wanted to read even through the New Testament, you want to join us, October 1st, we land in the New Testament. So for 3 months, you can read with the group and just go through the New Testament. So if you're interested in that, you can talk to Terry Van Bakel. Some of us got started and had to quit halfway through on this journey. If you want to pick it up at the New Testament and finish strong with everybody, you're welcome to do that as well. So that's my plug. Read the Bible and talk to Terry. That should be on a wall somewhere. Read the Bible, talk to Terry. So 2 Corinthians 3, and it talks about how Moses' face was veiled to conceal the glory of God, and that even when you read Moses now, there is still a veil there that you can't see through unless you see it through the lens of Jesus. This will help you understand the Old Testament. And then it says this. It says, but whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. All of a sudden, there is some meaning to what's going on in the Old Testament. Now, the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, we're all being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is Spirit. Just let that soak in for a minute. Right? If we who have turned to the Lord have had the veil moved from our eyes so that we have concepts of the old covenant that make sense only through the person of Jesus. When we look at Jesus with unveiled eyes, we're being transformed. And it's not instant. It's not, I pray this prayer and now I'm like Jesus. It's an ever-increasing kind of transformation. If we are truly in relationship with Jesus, if we are truly Christ followers, then we are continually being transformed into the image of Jesus. That's crazy. And then it says, it comes from the Lord who is Spirit. So much of kind of self-help ideas, or the ideas of teaching about making your life better, are about changing your habits. And changing habits is good. Or, fake it till you make it, dress for success. But when we talk about the transformation with Jesus, it's a spiritual transformation. In fact, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, and he has these 7 woes. And one of the woes is, like, you guys are missing this. And part of the reason is they have veiled faces when it comes to understanding the concepts of the Old Covenant. But he says to them this, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. Jesus had a way of making pretty good friends, right? You hypocrites, you clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but the inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. Now, from a completely practical perspective, that's actually not true, right? If all you do is wash the inside of your dishes and your cups, and you never touch the outside, like it's not true from a physical perspective. But from a spiritual perspective, it's absolutely true. Jesus says, you blind Pharisees, first clean the inside, and then he doesn't say, and then clean the outside. He says, first clean the inside, and then the outside will look after itself. Right? Our spiritual journey with Jesus is never about the uniform. Our spiritual journey with Jesus is never about the look, focusing on our appearance. The spiritual journey with Jesus is always about adjusting what's going on inside of us. And so often we try to conform to certain standards, certain rules, and transforming the outside actually never changes the inside. It just tires you out. True transformation only happens when I think differently, when I feel differently on the inside, then it affects the outside. And we all actually know this, right? That if you've been around somebody who is just unhealthy on the inside, they have horrible relationships on the outside. And you can make an effort, but if you are in turmoil on the inside, it affects basically every relationship around you. It affects your family, it affects your friends, it affects your relationship with authorities. And so often we will look at that, and from a human perspective, we will blame it on everyone else around us. Like nobody gets me. But what Jesus says is that if you have relationship problems, stop focusing on the relationships that are outside of you and focus on the health within you. And if you can clean the inside, then the outside looks after itself. And if I am truly a Christ follower, if I am truly engaged in walking the path that God calls me to walk, then the inside is ever changing and forming so that I reflect the image of Jesus. So that's simple, just change. Right? Just get healthy. How hard could that be? Right? Paul continues in 2 Corinthians 10. It says, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does." Although we live in this world of strife, we don't battle strife with strife. Although we live in this world of accusation, we don't battle this accusation with accusation. Paul continues. He says, "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." They have divine power to demolish strongholds. You know, there's this kind of balance in our journey with Jesus where we know that we only have the power to change through the work of Jesus, through the work of God, through the Holy Spirit moving in us. We only have the power to do that. And so we can say, I'm this way because God made me this way. And you kind of have to deal with it. All right? I've just got a hair trigger temper. That's the way God made me. And we think that we're okay just simply because we feel a certain way, and that's how God made us. But there is things that we are supposed to do in this journey of transformation. But it isn't all about sweating it out. It isn't about, working harder. It's actually about changing our approach to life. It's not about working harder at life, it's about changing how we approach life, how we approach people. And it says the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have. It's not that we aren't supposed to fight. It's just the way we're supposed to fight. And the weapons we're supposed to use. And the weapons that we use, they have divine power. They can actually change you. Winning an argument never changes you. But following the way of Jesus, that changes us. It transforms us. They have the power to demolish strongholds. If you sit here, and I'm not asking you to tell anybody else this, just visit your own head for a minute. Are there things about you that you have found frustrating about yourself your entire life? Right? Have you had difficulty keeping friends? Have you struggled with authority? Are there things about you that are strongholds? When you understand what a stronghold is in terms of like a structure of a city, there's the walls on the outside, there's the castle, and then deep within the castle there is this stronghold. Like it's the last line of defense, it's the hardest place to penetrate. Are there things that are part of you that you refuse to let go of, or you can't let go of? And this journey with Jesus actually has the power to attack what is in that stronghold, what is deep within. That's the transforming journey that we have been called to. It's able to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments of every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Here's our work. This is what we need to do. We don't need to go out in this world and win an argument. I don't need to convince you of anything. What I need to do to become more like Jesus is to actually work at controlling what I think. And you go, I just think with things that I think. I think that's who I am, right? How am I supposed to think differently? By making your thoughts obedient, by making your thoughts obedient to Christ. And you go, well, I can never forgive this person. And if I change that thought to, God will give me the ability to forgive this person because Jesus is forgiveness. And I start transferring my thinking from I'm already defeated, or I'm already right, or I don't need to change, or I can't change, into there's something better for me that Jesus calls me to. And the steps that take me there are about aligning my thinking with the words of Jesus. I take captive every thought that imprisons me. I take captive every thought that justifies anger within me. I take captive every thought that justifies unforgiveness in me. I take captive every thought that controls me and pushes me away from the person of Jesus. It's not about winning on the outside. It's about winning on the inside. To be truly transformed into the image of Jesus is not about wearing number 17 and fixing your mustache. It's about thinking like Jesus thinks. It's about cleaning up the inside. And our work for that is not working harder and digging deeper. Our work for that is trusting the words of Jesus. Spiritual maturity is reflected in how we think. You know, sometimes, again, we're physical. We measure things and people by what we see. And no fault of really how I grew up, but the concepts that I picked up as I was growing up was that spiritual maturity was increasing the amount of hours that you read your Bible, or praying more, especially praying in front of people, making sure you prayed for your meal in a restaurant. That's spiritual maturity. But that actually isn't spiritual maturity. That's just conforming to religion. Spiritual maturity is how we become more like Jesus and more effortlessly think like Jesus. Spiritual maturity is reflected in how we think. Wearing the dust of our rabbi or discipleship is transformation. It's also Jesus' character being our model. When we look at this, 1 Peter 2:21 and 23 says, "To this you were called, because Jesus suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps." And it gets a little tough here, just so you know. Okay? It says, when they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. That's what it looks like to be a Jesus follower. That's what it looks like to be a disciple of Jesus, is to act like Jesus acted. When they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. And the only way that he could do this is instead he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. The only way that you can truly rely on Jesus is if you trust Jesus. The only way that you can be a true follower of Jesus is if you trust him, which means if he said something, you apply it to your life. And you may be, you know what limits my walk with Jesus? Is that I think that I am responsible for my own protection. When Jesus was insulted, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he didn't threaten. And the reason he didn't is because he trusted his Father. And he trusted his Father was watching him. And he trusted that his Father had it all figured out. He released himself from the responsibility of hurting people that hurt him. And the way that he did it was from trust. Do you trust the Creator of all creation, the one who, last week we talked about how this is the God who sees us, this is the God who has a plan for us, This is the God who has placed a well right in front of us. We just have to ask him to show it to us. And he doesn't change our circumstances, and he doesn't tell us why. He provides for us wherever we are. Do you trust the God of all creation, the one who knit you together in your mother's womb, the one who decided how many hairs you would have on your head, the one who chose your parents for you, the one who picked how you would look, who picked whether you'd be smart in math or in the arts? Do you trust the God who mapped all of that out for you to look after you today? Or do you think you need to take it into your own hands? Do you trust the God of all creation to have it figured out? Or do you think you're responsible for your own protection? Jesus entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. And here's another tough one. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And as Jesus is saying, "Please, Father, forgive these people. They don't know what they're doing," while he is praying that, they're dividing up his clothes, or they're betting on his clothes. Very shirt off his back. And Jesus says, just forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. From my earthly perspective, I think they knew what they were doing. I think that they knew that they were hurting somebody. And Jesus took the perspective of saying to his Father, you know what? Just forgive them. Just forgive them. They don't get it. Imagine if we reflected the character of God enough that we just assumed when people hurt us that they didn't intend to, rather than assuming that they intended to hurt us. Can you imagine how much less drama there would be in this world? Might put reality TV out of business, but I'm okay with that if I can live in forgiveness. And they divided up his clothes. Discipleship is transformation. Jesus' character is our model. And if we sign up to be Jesus' disciples, if we sign up to be Christians, Christ followers, then our lives are a witness. Our lives matter. People see Jesus through what we do. John 13. And I love this passage because if you pull this part of the Bible into context, Jesus he just had the Last Supper with his disciples. He's washed their feet. They sang a hymn. Be curious what hymn they sang. But and then they walk to Gethsemane together, where Jesus is about to be betrayed and arrested. And on this walk, I look at this section of the passage and I go, so Jesus is talking about what really, really matters. This is his last chat with his disciples before he's about to be crucified. And as he is walking along, if you want to know what really matters in life, read this passage, because this is, to me, sort of the pinnacle of Jesus saying, you know what, I've spent 3 years with you, stuff you didn't get, but get this. Understand this. And he says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, by your love for one another, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Like it's the thing, right? He doesn't say if you eat kosher, They will know that you are my disciples. If you, wear a long beard and long hair and look like me, then they'll know that you're my disciples. It doesn't say if you speak Greek in a Hebrew world that they'll know that you are my disciples. It says people will see Jesus if you love one another. If you love like Jesus. By this one thing, people will know that Jesus is real. This is our witness. Now, I get knowing your story, being able to tell people how you became a Christian. It all matters. But you don't get an opportunity to tell that story without living an attractive life in love. You have, I gotta be careful how I say this, but this is how I feel. I feel like you have no right to talk about Jesus if you aren't reflecting Jesus. If people don't see the love of Jesus in you, I almost want to say, please don't talk about him. Because Jesus says, this is the thing that identifies you as my disciple, if you love one another. Matthew 5 says this, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So, do we fully take on the concept that we are the light of the world? I mean, it's easy to say that Jesus is the light of the world, but Jesus actually says to his disciples that you are the light of the world. That you are the light of the world. That you, as Jesus' disciples, have the answers to the world's dilemmas. You, as Jesus' disciples, have the authority and the ability to battle the strongholds that lie within you. You are the light of the world. And so often, as humans, we love to look at other Christians and say, yeah, you're not being very light of the worldish. When Jesus never says to you that that's your job. Jesus tells you and me to battle our strongholds of unforgiveness and anger. Jesus tells us to battle our own strongholds by changing our thinking, not by changing the people around us. You are the light of the world. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So as we enter into this series on character, I think it's important to understand that it doesn't happen instantly. And you've got to stop beating yourself up for struggling along the way. This is an ever-increasing transformation. And when I think about the qualities of Jesus and the character of Jesus, I think we're able to look at this list and honestly say, you know what? I'm actually a pretty good neighbor. Right? Like I'm pretty good at caring for people around me. And looking at that and say, there he is. That's Jesus growing in me. That's not me just slugging it out till I'm a good neighbor. This is me actually reflecting Jesus, who I am becoming more like. So, I'm going to ask you, maybe this list, maybe something else. Have you noticed some growth in your humility? Have you noticed some growth in your love? Because if you are a Christ follower, you are growing in these areas. And you need to recognize that. You need to lean on that. You can even celebrate that. That in this walk with Jesus, I am becoming more like Jesus in certain ways. Maybe you've had this incredible release from unforgiveness. Maybe you haven't. But I will tell you this, that if you continue to become more like Jesus, at some point you will have this incredible journey of forgiveness. And so when we look at this list, I want you to look at it first from the idea of, I can see this in me. When I think about who I was, I can see Jesus has shifted this in me. I'm a little more humble. Or whatever it is. What is the thing that you look at and you go, you know what? It's not that I've nailed this down. I haven't got it completely figured out, but I am more like Jesus in this aspect. And I can see it. I guarantee that if Jesus is alive in you, then there is positive movement towards Jesus. Are you becoming more prayerful? Are you becoming more understanding? And as you start there and recognize that Jesus is working in you, that Jesus has made a shift in you, that Jesus is making you more like him, what on that list jumps out at you and you go, oh, not that? No, I'm not there yet. You have at your disposal the weapons to shatter that stronghold. And Jesus calls you to change your thinking. And it's not about working harder, it's about thinking differently. What is it today that you can say to Jesus, I need to start following your example in this area, help me? And I just want you to have that experience with Jesus of handing something over. And then allowing God to show you that he is working on that with you.